All right, welcome back to the podcast. I am so humbled to be your host, Mike Cunningham, National Sales Manager for Gill Athletics. And today, well, we're going to have a little fun today. I'm super excited. Help me welcome the head coach of the University of Saint Francis in beautiful Fort Wayne, Indiana. Help me welcome the wise, the wonderful Mr. Kyle Allison. Kyle, how are you today, sir?
I'm good. How are you, Mike?
You know, as we kind of talked about, when you do the pre-interview, you get to hear all the things again,
Yeah.
Kyle. You know, and I've said this before, I mean, I get to interview coaches around the country. So whenever anybody asks me how am I doing, I'd say awesome. I mean, because I am doing amazing. I'm just exploring coaches in their lives, watching a little bit of world champs and seeing coaches, perform unbelievably with their athletes. It's really quite amazing. Are you watching any of the world champs?
Yeah, I stayed up probably later than I needed to last night, watching the men's shot put. Whenever you have an opportunity to watch one of the best in the world, and then probably the second best in the world with Joe Kovacs and Ryan Krauser to compete against each other, it was a lot of fun to watch them compete and see Ryan kind of pull it off in his second to last throw was a lot of fun to watch.
You pronounced his name a lot better than I could. Tell me the name of the guy that got third. Josh, right?
Josh Owatunde.
Where did he go to school? I know the other
He went to
guys.
South Carolina.
Ah, that's right. Yes, yes,
Yeah, he
yes.
went to
That's
South
right.
Carolina, so he's still a younger guy, but
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, throws and professional throws kind of my world.
absolutely.
So I try to pay attention to it the best I can.
I saw, obviously Krauser and Kovacs get all the news and the media, and they deserve it because, like I said, number one and number two, I mean, they're amazing. Love them, love their coaches. Josh, I saw a post this morning. So we're actually recording on what is today's date? July 18th. You're listening to
18.
this on in August, probably. So there's no spoilers, right? You've already seen all the
Yeah.
results here. But Josh, I guess his throw was number 18 ever.
Okay.
And I couldn't, because here's a guy who doesn't have a lot of name
Yeah.
recognition, right? I was, again, Krauser and Kovacs gets all that, but I was like, man, I literally, as we were waiting to get online today, I was like, the number 18 throw ever, and I'm like, wow, like what? I wonder what that feels like. I also wondered that about Ryan Krauser, the number one throw ever, but like the number 18 guy so far, and like you said, he's young, so he may go
Okay.
number one day, right? I mean, it's you build and build and build, but I just wonder, like, I wonder if there's ever, like, did he sit back and think, man, shot put's been going on for a long time. Some amazing athletes have been in this event and are in this event. And out of everybody in the world, there's billions with a B people in this world, and there have been billions of people. And he is the 18th best person to ever do that. That kind of boggles me, actually. I don't know that we put enough, like, we think 18, it's like, big deal. We got Krauser number one. It's
Yeah.
like the 18th best dude. I'm not the 18th best guy at anything. I'm not the 18th
Yeah.
best guy in my house, and I only live with four people. I'm not the 18th best person on anything. It's
Yeah.
amazing to me.
But that's what track and field is. Track and field is record keeping. It is the best to ever do it. In the long history of the sport. And anytime that you can say that you're one of the top whatever in the world to do it is just amazing.
It is. It is. Well, we're going to find out if you are top 18 in
Ooh.
anything. Spoiler alert, he just said no. But I bet that's not true. So, Kyle, let's talk about your journey here. I'm just so happy again that you'd be here with us today. Our goal here is to uplift and honor coaches around the country and a little bit around the world. We've had some international coaches here as well. That's why we started the podcast over 3 years ago now, 2 years ago, going on 3 years. And so I just love learning about coaches, why you got into coaching, why you did the stops you did, the things. I mean, your impact on young people is immeasurable. And I mean that on any level. If you're listening right now and you're a middle school coach, you're a Division I coach, NAIA, JUCO, it doesn't matter. Your impact on young people is immeasurable. So I'm excited to learn about your journey, Kyle. So let's talk about, coaching. I've said this many, many times. There's a time in your life, if you were an athlete, I'm assuming here a little bit, but there's a time in your life when coaching was all about what happened to you. So a coach coached into you, but at some point in your life, something flipped and it was like, oh, wait a minute, I could be a coach. Like, this could be my career. Can you remember that? When and how did coaching become like, oh, I could actually, like, I can make a living. This could be my job. Other people teach, other people are lawyers, other people are business owners. I can coach track. When did that happen for you?
It probably had to be at some point in time in college. I went to the University of Indianapolis.
Go
Scott Fangman's,
Greyhounds.
oh yeah, go
That's
Greyhounds.
right.
Scott Fangman's the head coach there. But like the majority of pretty big Division II schools, I had a lot of event coaches that really impacted me. Coach Holman was a throws coach there. He was an old retired teacher who just loved to throw, he made it fun. But honestly, ironically, one of the people that made me really want to get into coaching is my senior year. I had the opportunity to help out a seventh grade football team. And I wanted to get into coaching. I really enjoyed sports. I didn't care what it was. I didn't care if it was basketball. I didn't care if it was football. I always enjoyed athletics. So I coached seventh grade football, and I worked with a man named Don Ivy, who has kind of devoted his life to high school and youth athletics. He's the head softball coach at Decatur Central High School and just outside of Indianapolis. And he made it fun. It was, it's seventh grade football. Made it a lot of fun. And then, kind of going into my senior year, I was like, you know what? He had so much fun being a coach for just these youth kids. Maybe this is something that I want to do. Maybe this is something that I want to get into full time and see if I can kind of devote my life and career to, the next level of athletics.
So did you go into U of ND as an education major, or what did you actually go to major in and thought you were going to actually be? We don't normally grow up thinking we're going to be coaches, right? No, we grow up thinking we're going to be firemen or police or astronauts, right? And eventually when we get to college, reality hits and like, okay, I'm going to go be an accountant or something. What did you actually go into major and become?
I originally was going to go into marketing. I really enjoyed medicine, and Indianapolis is home to Eli Lilly. So I wanted to do pharmaceutical sales.
Oh.
That's what I really wanted to do. I got into it for 2 years and just realized it's a different type of living. It's a different world. And then I actually changed my major to education. My family is all educators. My dad taught fifth grade for 40 years. My mom taught high school for 40 years. My
Wow.
brother is a high school basketball coach and teacher. So education has always been kind of really big in my life. My brother's 5 years older than me, so he was actually coaching high school basketball when I was in college. So probably some pretty easy influence to get into the coaching world with that. So ended up graduating from UND actually with an exercise science degree, not education, because I did realize I wanted kind of more of that athletic side of things, maybe not quite the teaching side of things.
Yeah, with all those teachers in the family, I'm actually surprised. What did they think about you actually starting out as marketing? Were they like, "Hey, wait a minute now, we're a family of teachers and educators. What are you doing?"
It's kind of it's interesting. You hear about some of these families. It's like the family full of police officers or firefighters, and like that's the comfort. Me walking into a high school and standing in front of a classroom is just comfortable, just because I grew up in it. I actually spent 2 total educational years without a parent in the building that I went to school in. My dad was in the elementary school that I went to. I went to the middle school for 2 years where I didn't have a parent there, and then I went to high school for 4 years where my mom was there. Probably caught them off guard a little bit that I was interested in marketing. But I had some really awesome business teachers at my high school that really encouraged me to explore that route, and I really enjoyed it. It just wasn't for me as a career.
Well, I'm glad they didn't pressure you, because
Yeah.
sometimes those families of police officers or whatever genre, it's like, oh no, you have to, like, this is what we do, and now you're the black sheep when you go off. And typically, when someone goes off and does what they have passion towards, whether it's what the family tradition is or not, good things happen. So I'm glad that you got to explore that avenue. And then what's interesting is how it kind of tractor beamed you back in, though. It's like, oh man, I've actually been an educator my whole life.
Yeah.
This is what I'm going to do here. That's awesome. So you coached seventh grade football. Were you a football player in high school?
Yeah. I, like most track athletes, started off playing football, and then ended up throwing the shot put in high school. Had a lot of success with that. But I still love football. Still a passion of mine. Every single year, you always see At the NFL draft, it's like, these, 20 of the top 40 were track athletes in high school.
Yeah, easy.
That's great. I'd love to see them continue to compete in track and field. But yeah, started off with football, went over to track, and it's been track kind of ever since.
Did you grow up in Indy? I know you went to school there.
I went to Warsaw High School in Warsaw, Indiana. So it's about 2.5 hours north of Indianapolis.
So were you a Colts fan?
Yeah.
Right.
Been a Colts fan. Kind of, I grew up when Peyton Manning was quarterback.
Okay.
So hard to not be a Colts fan at that point in time. And I was always the weird one where, I've always been a big guy, 6'4", 275 pounds. I didn't own a Peyton Manning jersey. I owned a Jeff Saturday jersey.
Nice.
Always loved the big guys. Even to this day, offensive lineman Quentin Nelson. Those guys are the guys that I tend to always love to watch and see what they do.
Didn't Saturday play like some ungodly amount of years? Like, wasn't he a 17-year guy or something like that?
Yeah, he played for a really long time.
Yeah, it's quite amazing. I'm not an NFL guy at all. I grew up in Alabama, so there are no NFL teams. So I'm a college football guy, so I don't pay attention much to the Sundays. But I think the average career in NFL is something like just under 3 seasons. And so anytime a Saturday or even Peyton Manning, as you mentioned, played 10 plus years, that's just an anomaly. Tom Brady playing, I don't know, what's he been playing since 1980 or something like that?
Yeah, pretty much.
It's pretty amazing. A luck has to play into it, right, as well, from injuries and what have you. So it's really amazing. All right, so you did 7th grade football. You love track. You're a big guy, so you're a shot putter. Love that event. So of course you were watching the world champs last night for that event. What was your first track coaching experience? And did you, as a football and track kind of guy, did you ever, especially you started with 7th grade football, did you ever have a moment of like, should I go coaching football or should I go coaching track? Or was it always my passion for track trumps my passion for football coaching?
I continued to do track in college. I didn't do football in college. So a lot of times it's really hard to get your foot in the door if you haven't done it. So I explored the track route. One thing that I did that I tell my team today is I actually emailed every single collegiate coach in the state of Indiana saying, hey, I would really love this opportunity, even if it's just to volunteer with your program. I want to get into coaching. I would really appreciate the opportunity. Heard back from a couple of them, said no. Heard back from about 3 or 4 that said, hey, let's get you on campus. Let's interview. Let's see what we can do.
All right. So this is a topic that comes up every once in a while. I bet you out of 166 episodes, this has come up, I'll exaggerate and say 16 times. So 10%, because that's an easy number. And I love this because this is a passion of mine. So you said you emailed every coach in Indiana. I want to know, did you email each of them individually, or did you group them all, put them in the blind carbon copy, or did you make the real sin and put them all in the 2, or did you individually? Tell me how you executed that.
I individually emailed them all.
Attaboy, there we go.
And I tried to personalize it the best I could. Mm-hmm. I was 22 years old, so I probably screwed up every now and then. Mm-hmm. But yeah, individually tried to email all of them. Tried to do my research on it too. I wanted to go to a school that at least had a couple throwers. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to go to a school, you get online nowadays and it's like, I want to help, your throws group. Well, we have one total thrower and that's all we've ever had for the last 6 years. Right. It just kind of makes you look silly.
Yeah.
So yeah, individual emails.
I love that. And I love and not hate, not the opposite, but you said some responded and some didn't.
Yeah.
And obviously I don't like the ones who didn't. I don't like the action, not the people. But I can also understand. You yourself must get 100 emails a day. Maybe that's a slight exaggeration, but a lot of emails a day, right? But I love that the ones that took a second, even, and I'm sure of the ones that did respond, some of them were probably pretty short and curt, like, hey, we don't have a spot. Thanks for emailing. Yeah. Done. Right. And some maybe, like you said, hey, yeah, let's get you on campus, take a look, whatever, yada, yada. I love that. And what the reason I love that is it just took a couple of seconds for the long ones and the short emails. It just took a couple of seconds to respond and give some encouragement to someone who was trying it, So I really respect that out of those men and women who did respond. And I respect that you did not group email everybody, that you
Yeah.
individually email. That to me, when I think about the definition of the word hustle, that to me is the hustle. It's like, oh, okay, I'm going to reach out to everyone. I don't care how long it's going to take. I don't care that it's going to take a little extra to individualize. That's it, man. I love that. Did you do that? Was that something new as a 22-year-old, or had that been something that you'd done like coming out of high school? Did you email every coach to try to get on their team, or was this something kind of new for you?
Probably something pretty new. You go into your senior year, and I didn't really fully know like what a career in collegiate athletics looked like.
Hmm.
A lot of kids see Nick Saban, a lot of kids see Jim Harbaugh, and it's these big name people. They don't see what it's really like, so I didn't really know what to expect. I didn't really know, but I knew at that point in time that like I had to have it in my life, and so I was willing to make whatever sacrifice that I needed to make. And if that meant I spent an entire weekend at 22 years old emailing coaches, seeing if I get a response that was worth it to me.
Hey, that's great, because there are plenty of people, unfortunately, that think that they are above taking 48 hours to just crank out email after email after email. You know what I'm saying? So like, I love that humbleness of like, well, who am I got to put in work, just like I asked myself to do it as an athlete. And if I
Yeah,
want to coach, I'm probably going to ask my athletes that. Well, golly, I better lead from it by example. So I love that humbleness of just grinding, getting it done. Like I said, that to me is the proper definition of hustle, like a positive overexertion. Like, hopefully you have not had to do that again,
no,
but that you did it and got it done. And so did it bear fruit?
yeah, it did. I it actually turned into two very legitimate interview opportunities.
Wow.
One in which was my first coaching job in collegiate athletics. Was able to become the throws coach at Manchester University, which is an NCAA Division III school in North Manchester, Indiana. Worked for Brian Cashdollar, who's been the head coach there now for I think like 22, 23, 24 years. Um, uh, it was actually kind of a perfect storm. They're only about 30 minutes away from my hometown. So somewhat comfortable, and the perks were great. They weren't going to pay you a whole lot of money, but you got to sleep in a dorm room and they gave you a meal plan. It worked out really well for someone who was just willing to do whatever it took to get into college athletics, and they let me do that. Really, really grateful for Coach Cash Dollar to let me kind of figure it out.
Yeah, love Brian. What a great guy. Love that school. Recently did a whole new facility,
Yeah.
and just it's amazing, and they deserve it all. So I'm so happy that they were able to get that new facility there, and what they're doing there at Manchester. What was it? So you mentioned, staying in the dorms, having a meal plan, and to me, unfortunately, that's a common
Yeah.
thing. I hear that a lot. I don't like it because one of my advocacies is the continual professionalization of collegiate track and field coaches, and track and field coaches in general, but on the college side of, no more starting salaries of 15,000, 20,000, no more dorms and things like that. Actually, I'm okay with that if the staff was fully built out. Like, oh, they had six
Yeah.
full-time guys and gals that were making 50 plus and whatever. And it's like, oh yeah, we needed an intern. Like I kind of get
Yeah.
that. I don't like free labor intern, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
As you did that though, was there when you thought you were getting into coaching, and so you emailed all these coaches. So when you said Indiana, so you're talking about Purdue, Indiana. I mean, and there's
Oh
some
yeah.
big schools, amazing programs all throughout the state. Was it a letdown when it was like, man, I'm back in the dorm? Like, I'm basically still a college kid here. I'm still living in the dorm, still eating the college meal. Or was it like, man, I am just so happy to have, like, what is it? Will work for peanuts. It's like,
Yeah.
at least I get to eat and I get to coach at the same time.
It was kind of one of those things where it's like I had an office with my name on it. I was Coach Allison, and that was something that was really important to me, and so it didn't bother me. And the first dorm room that I lived in, it didn't have air conditioning, and Midwestern summers are brutal. And I remember I moved into that dorm room like the first week of August, and it's 100 degrees outside, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do this. But then all of a sudden you get into it. You start doing strength training. You start building relationships with the other coaches in other sports, and then it's bigger than just you. It's
Mhm.
bigger than what you want. for your own personal life, there's a working, living university here that there are people that might be relying on you to be successful. And, that's something that was instilled in me by my parents. They worked for the same school corporation their entire careers. And, for me to have an opportunity to work in a small private institution, there are not a lot of employees that work at schools like that. And for me to be selected, it didn't matter. I was going to be willing to work there. And, you talk about $18,000. I was making less than that. Yeah. But the money wasn't that big of a deal for me. It'd be nice to have, these nice huge paychecks, but the opportunity to work with college athletics, Coach Cashdollar gave me the opportunity to do that. And that meant a lot to me. And I was going to bust my butt for him to make sure that I didn't let him down.
I'm going to challenge just a little bit. I don't think you're actually saying it this way. So this is, it's not necessarily a challenge about you and what you just said there, but the challenge I like to always give when someone says it's not about the money, it was okay. And I'm cool with that because I understand passion. I get that. And you know what? I'm in love with people who have a passion to do art in their garage, that have the passion to create their own ham radio station, hobbies. You got to have money. You know what I'm saying? And I'll fight back against anybody that says, oh, you can't do it for the money. Yeah, I get that. I mean, that can't be your maybe primary, but I need money to raise a family, have a life, etc. So I don't think that's the way you're saying it, though. So I'm not really challenging what you said there in your experience, Kyle. Just in general, when people talk about like, oh, yeah, I don't do it for the money. It's like, well, how do you get a house for your kids? How do you pay for school? You got money is not evil. Being, doing evil things to make money is evil. Money's good because you need it for your life.
And I was at a very different point in time in my life than I am now.
Great point. I was going to ask. Yeah,
I'm married. I have a son now. I'm not going to quit my job and go take something for $12,000 a year.
Right. That's a great point too, though, that Kyle, about the stages of your life. So that's why I say I wasn't challenging what, because that's why I didn't think you were saying the way you said it was not how I'm challenging what I hear from others sometimes. Because it feels like this altruistic thing at points sometimes. We're like, oh yeah, I'm 40 and I have a family and I'm making $15,000 because I love the sport. And it's like, well, then I kind of feel like you're being selfish because you're putting your family to the side to do coaching. And while coaching is the tops, I mean, obviously not only my career, my former career as a college coach, my career here doing this interviewing coach, of course, I think coaching, specifically track and field, is the tops, but it can't be number one.
Yeah.
You have to do this for others. You have to do this for yourself so that you can be available for others. Okay. Off that soapbox. Sorry. Okay. So I always think about people's first jobs, especially in track and field, as the tryout period. Even though you had a little bit of coaching at 7th grade football, and so there was real coaching there, so you got to experience the good and bad of athletes and their attitudes and positive and negative things like that. So I always think about the first coaching job, though, as like, okay, I had this thought of what coaching is, well, now I'm doing it, and I either like, okay, yep, I love it, or I'm going to accept it, or okay, what was my degree in? Okay, I can go back and do that job.
Yeah.
Let's go try something else. What was that experience actually coaching? So now you're responsible for kids, the weight room, the technique, the competitions. What was that experience like for you?
I think back on that time now sometimes. I'm going into my 9th year of coaching collegiately, and I'm like, I probably was an awful coach that first indoor season. I probably was horrible. But I actually very fondly remember that first outdoor season. I had a young lady who was a freshman who ended up being the conference champion in the hammer.
Wow.
And I had a young man who ended up being the conference champion in the discus. He went on to get second in the hammer that year in the conference. And I think that success led me to be hooked. I was in it. And it wasn't just the kids who were winning the conference championships either. It was, coming in, you have a wide range of kids. You've got a kid who may be a freshman who've never been taught by a legitimate throws coach before, or you may have someone who's a junior or a senior who's been in a program for 2 or 3 years. But to be able to see them get better, to turn a 45-meter guy hammer thrower into a 51-meter hammer thrower in your first year of coaching, you're just addicted to it. You love seeing the progress. You love seeing, the delayed satisfaction of in the weight room in the morning, doing what you need to do to be successful, and then going out there and getting the reward for it. That first year was big. That first year of having the success, one with a junior male thrower and then a freshman female thrower. The freshman female thrower, you're sitting here going, well, if we could do this as a freshman, what can we do? How much better can we get? And so I was in it after that first outdoor season.
Did you learn the hammer in college?
Yeah, I went to college as a shot put guy.
Right.
Realized I was never going to be strong enough to be a really elite shot put thrower, and then kind of gravitated over to the hammer. I didn't have a spectacular collegiate career. I never made an NCAA Division II national championship, anything like that. But the new throwing event of the hammer kind of challenged me, and I really liked that. And I've always kind of gravitated towards the hammer post, my athletic career to be able to develop my athletes.
Yeah, I love the hammer. I've said it many, many times. When I was a college coach, I would go early to practice just to watch the hammer. The hammer throwers are always early and before and away from everybody. I just loved watching practice. It was like this most artistic ballet, violent event that there is, and it's always been my favorite event out of all the throws. So, what were you during that first year? I love how I have so much respect for you to say I look back and I probably was a terrible throws coach, specifically through indoor, because I think if you've coached for some amount of time, and I don't know what that time is, 5 years, 10 years, 20, if you're not looking back at your first years or any back seasons and go, yeah, I'm better than I was then, I'm not sure you're doing it right as a coach. I've think about, when I first started coaching, I coached a couple years of high school, and that was a long time. I was 96, 97. So that feels like ancient. You weren't even born in 96. Yeah.
I was 6 years old.
All right, there you go. That's always my way of asking people their age without actually asking.
Yeah.
Little interview secrets right there. I still, when I catch those kids, they're adults now, but I catch those kids on Facebook, I still like, hey man, I just want to say I'm sorry. Like, I had no idea what I was doing for that workout. Like, what an idiot. I'm so sorry, man. I held you back, and that's unforgivable. Where was your headspace for coaching education at that point? Still early in your career, so maybe you don't even know about coaching education besides asking other coaches, which is a form of coaching education. What were you doing to learn how to coach your craft better?
Yeah, luckily, Brian Cashdollar is an amazing coach. If you do not know who Brian Cashdollar is at HSU University, send him an email, get to know him.
Agreed.
He loves the sport.
Co-sign, 100%. One of the greatest guys out there.
Loves the sport,
And as soon as we said that, we froze up. Brian must have a hex on our internet here, so we're going to give Kyle just a second to get back on here. See, there he is. I said that Brian had a hex on our internet. As soon as we started talking good about him, he was like, pause this. We ain't having this.
Yeah.
Start over with Brian Cashdollar is one of the greatest people in the world.
Yeah, I get hired in August to work for Brian, and then in December, I think we were in Orlando at the coaches convention, put on by the Coaches Association. And the fact that you're willing to pay for me to fly with you to Orlando to, go to the convention, and then, hey, your job while you're here is to go to as many seminars as you possibly can, and to learn from some of the best of the best. That was kind of my first real, coaching education. In between the summer, between my first and second year, I went on to get my USATF Level 1 certification. And so, that was always kind of the thing, get your Level 1, continue going to the coaches convention. Now, the Coaches Association has gone on to do a lot of these certifications and symposiums and take classes and, different things like that. But I think in my 9 years of coaching collegiate track and field, I've only not gone to the convention one time. And that was my first year as the head coach at Saint Francis. I even did the virtual coaching in the middle of COVID to be able to hear from them. So coaching education is a big deal. I don't care if you've been in it for 50 years, you still can learn from someone.
What did you think about level one? So I was a big USATF. I was before the USTF CCCA Academy. So I did level one and did several of the level twos. The level one is always interesting to me because it's the broad scope of all the
Yeah.
events. And as a thrower and as a throws coach, that means you had to sit through endurance, sprints, jumps, pole vault, right? Uh, what did you think about like when they started talking about endurance and stuff? Did you just sleep, or was there anything that you learned, or I'll even say, was there anything exciting? Like, oh man, I had no idea they did this for 10Ks or whatever.
You know, I had I think I had the understanding that at some point in time I wanted to become a head coach
Mhm.
going into that already. So I had to pay attention. You know, it's incredibly difficult. Even if you look on at the Division One, Division Two, Division Three NAI level, there are very few throws specialty head coaches. So I had to be willing to diversify who I was and open my education to other people. And, you know, I remember I'm sitting here even today, you know, wearing a cross country shirt. You know, I remember I wore a Manchester cross country shirt one day, and the looks that I got from people, it's like, why are you, you know, you're here in level one learning about endurance. It's like, yeah, I am. You know, there might be an athlete before a race that walks up to me and is nervous, and they might need a little word of encouragement. And
Wow.
I want to make sure that I know what I'm talking about. You know, it goes back to, you know, Coach Cash Dollar entrusted me to be a coach in his program, and I need to be the best coach that I possibly could be.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna let today go by without giving you mad respect at wearing a cross country shirt, my man. That's pretty good. But you easily could have just repped the throws and repped St. Francis,
Yeah.
but you repped the cross country team because that's the next season up. So I love it, man. That's really good.
It honestly really helped because my very first year at Manchester, we had a very competitive men's cross country team. They qualified for NCAA Division III national championship that year. Won the conference championship as a team. I think that was their third year in a row that they had won. Placed really high at the regional level. So cross country is a very addicting thing if you can figure out the whole team aspect of it.
Mhm.
And me being a football guy, I love the team aspect. You know, you could have the best four runners in the nation, but if your number five isn't very good, sorry, you're going to lose.
Yeah.
And so that's something that I really enjoyed. And we had a lot of really awesome upperclassmen runners on that team that they were willing to explain it to the throws guy. You know, I finally remember I would always say, "Can you break that down into 400 meters for me?" Because I could understand the one lap around the
Mhm.
track. You know, what are their 400-meter splits? And it's like, okay, well, you just did this for, you know, how many ever miles? You just did it for 5 miles. Oh man, you know, that's, you know, 70
Mhm.
second 400s. And it's like, wow, that's quick. You know, you're running. And it just led me to just fall in love with kind of a completely separate sport of cross country.
Yeah, that's interesting. You break it down to quarters because similar. If you can tell me, like, if a distance runner is doing repeat 800s or repeat miles, like I get that. Like, oh, okay, wow, they're doing 415 repeat miles. Well, golly,
Yeah.
sub four is amazing. So if they're doing five of those at 415, that's really good, right? But when they start doing like, oh yeah, we did 1K repeats, I'm like, all right, I am lost. There is no race that I'm very
Yeah.
familiar with that, so I to know 1K times, so I get lost. So I love that you had to kind of just break it down. It's kind of similar in the throws, right? When someone talks about throws, well, how do you throw a 16-pound ball 70 feet? Well, okay, it starts with a start, and then you have to have the position in the middle, then you have the power position, etc. Just kind of, it's just phases of what you're coaching.
Yeah.
So what did you do? The hammer again just fascinates me, not only because I love it, it's my favorite throwing event, but it's typically not something that you've done since freshman year. Like you probably started throwing the shot put at freshman year. So as you went through high school and then college, the shot put in college is, I'm going to do air quotes here, the same as the shot put in high school, meaning the event is similar. Maybe you went from a glider to a spinner or something
Yeah.
like that, but it's still 16 pounds and you're throwing it. The hammer, you did not typically not do anything. Like you might not even have known what the hammer was in high school. And then you get to college and like, hey, learn how to turn. And it's
Yeah.
a whole new event, right? So even as a first, second year coach, it's still only your fifth or sixth roughly year of even knowing what the hammer is. What did you do to help become a better to understand the event better, to coach it better? Were you, you're in Indiana, so you got you got a lot of good throws coaches in Indiana, but you got one of the top hammer guys, and Larry Judge down there at Ball State now in Muncie. Was there anybody that you reached out to? Was there any, like, you saw this one video and man, it was from Bondarchuk, and it totally opened up my mind on how to throw? Was there anything that you were doing to help understand that amazing event better?
Yeah, I mean, being a Division II guy, loving the throws in the early 2010s, Kibwe Johnson. Kibwe was the guy. He threw at a Division II school. So I just remember, I mean, even to this day in my office, I have a picture of Kibwe up, just because I think he really he does things differently. And I love that about him. Being a Midwest guy, Coach Judge did the my level 1 training for throws. He was the level 1 instructor, so literally learning from one of the best guys right then and there. And then you can't be a Midwest guy if you don't mention Judd Logan.
Yes, of course.
Judd, Judd is a legend, always will be a legend. And just being at UIndy during my time, the year that I competed in them, they actually had the Division II national champion, the Hammer. And so you kind of can't come into a program there where hammer was a big deal. We had a bunch of really competitive female throwers. We had a bunch of really competitive male throwers where, we're talking about 65 to 68 meters was kind of the expectation. And so I had a really amazing teammate, Willie Little, who coaches high school track at Brownsburg High School, kind of has his own little throws group right now. Who he was just someone who was willing to be patient, understanding that you're not going to be great at it your freshman year, but also the understanding of you as a freshman learning it is also the same as the person from Lewis University who's a freshman learning it. It's a completely new start. It's a new event. And that's kind of how I teach to my kids today, is it's kind of a level playing field. Unless if you're coming from one of these European countries where they teach you it at the age of 8, you are going to learn the hammer hopefully at the same time as your competitor.
That's a great point. I actually never thought about it that way. I mean, as an athlete coming in who's nervous about the hammer, I feel like that'd be kind of weight lift, like take the weight off your chest of like, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, I'm starting the same spot. Everybody, to your point, some very few exceptions, unfortunately, to be honest with you, not just the international experience exception, but I wish many, many more high school athletes were able to do the hammer. So it is an exception. But just a relief of like, oh, I'm not up. When you learn the javelin, you get 22 states to do the javelin.
Yeah.
Like, oh, there's a lot of people got experience. I'm not starting from ground zero. But that hammer, yeah, we're all in the same playing field.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's something that you forget coaching collegiately what it's like sometimes to teach someone the basic, the very beginning.
Yeah.
And so I think that's something that I've really tried to focus on. I'll tell my kids, you got to do 1,000 turns before I even let you let go of the hammer. Because if you don't know how to turn, you're never going to know how to throw it. And just kind of really getting that groundwork in. It's like the first time you throw a shot put. I always tell the kids, and we have a lot of multi-sport athletes, can you remember the first time you shot a basketball? Being in Indiana, everyone shot a basketball before. When's the first time you shot a basketball? Okay, 5. All right, well, you're 18 now. You've had all this year of experience of shooting a basketball where it's just second nature to you. Congratulations, you're now a 5-year-old again when it comes to throwing the hammer. And that it takes time. You have to be patient. With a new event, you're going to have really high highs and really low lows, and just kind of navigating those with those athletes. And that's why we have seen success in the hammer, is just being patient and understanding that it's a year process. It's years of time, not just instant success.
That might be my favorite quote ever, Kyle. Oh, congratulations, you're 5 years old
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
You've got to come up with a Saint Francis hammer shirt with that on the back. It's like, congratulations, you're 5 years old again. That is awesome. And such the truth. There are to carve out a few events in college where that was a great visual for me, at least, of going back to the base. Like, you do not know how to turn at all on the hammer. I'm not trying to help you get better at turning. I got to start with teaching.
Yeah.
I got to teach you how to hold the handle. it's not necessarily intuitive on how you would handle the hammer handle. I love that. And you start thinking about other events like the 100 and the 110s and things like the mile. It's like, oh, okay, I don't have to teach an incoming freshman miler how to run, how to step one in front of the other. I got to teach them to get better. They got to get their splits better and things like that. But I don't have to teach them from stage one. That goes down to probably the javelin a lot, the hammer for sure a lot. I'm gonna sneak in the steeplechase for some hurdling technique, right? Maybe. And then some multi-athletes, of course, maybe specifically in the throws, because I think most multis come from sprints, hurdles, jumps background, so you got to learn the throws and stuff. So that's a really good point. Again, best quote I've ever heard of the hammer. Congrats, you're 5 years old.
I mean, I remember, 2 years ago, we had a young lady at St. Francis who ended up being fourth in the nation in the javelin at the NAIA level. And she was 4 years into throwing jav. She was a senior, and she was, warming up, and she kind of had a bubbly personality. She didn't know a stranger. She's talking to all the girls out there warming up, and then, they're like, oh yeah, I threw it in high school. That girl over there, we were in the same high school conference together. And she was like, oh, okay, like I am completely outmanned. And like she qualified as a sophomore and got dead last. And then her junior year was the COVID year, and then her senior year she goes on to get fourth. And it was just kind of a very eye-opening experience, again, for me, still as a really young coach, to realize that there are other kids out there that are going to be more experienced, and you can't really control that, but what you can control is just how you package it to your kids and get them to believe it.
Yeah, I always flip things. I'm much more coach centric, and your job is to be athlete centric as the coach, right? But when you said that, I started thinking about coaches. So you talked about, framing it that, these other people athletically have done it longer. They're doing it as good, and you're getting fourth and then winning, that's amazing. I think I literally just started thinking about that for coaches. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves as coaches that we want to win the title, whether it's your conference or national. We want to have all the All-Americans and XYZ event. But maybe you're just starting. And when I say just starting, maybe you're year 10, because there's plenty of 20, 30, 40 year experienced coaches out there that are doing amazing, but you're up against every other coach that hopefully to some degree has the same attitude as you. So they're learning, they're educating, they're recruiting athletes. Maybe they recruit a more athletic person than your kid, etc. You're up against it. And so, we've talked a lot here lately on the podcast about that winning is hard. And I think we forget that sometimes, especially in track, because we have so many events and so many meets. When you go to a basketball game, there's one winner, right? We don't count the person who scores the most points as the winner. That could be the other team. There's one winning team. But we go to a track meet, there are, 22 events at college? 20, 21, 22, and then male and women. Yeah, male and female. So 44 events. So we get to see 40. So sometimes I think we forget, like, oh, like it actually is hard. I know that we have 44 winners, but it's hard to win.
Yeah. And it gets, I mean, for me, going from an NCAA Division III school to an NAIA school, the level, like Division III is very competitive.
Amazing.
But NAIA, the top end is just ridiculous sometimes. Of just, I had a young man this last year who threw 59 meters in the hammer for 8th place in the nation, and he got 3rd at our conference championship. Just the top end to be good, the day in, the day out, it truly is a grind for coaches, and it's a grind for your athletes too. Your athletes that want to be successful and that want to be good, winning matters to them, and then understanding how hard it is to win is something that I think is kind of becoming more of the forefront of just like, how do you get them to that next level? How do you get them to go from being good to great? Because the super uber talented athletes aren't walking into the University of St. Francis to run track and field. We have to develop our athletes.
So let's explore that. Two topics there I'd love to explore with you. One is, we'll put a pin on it. Help me remember about developing your athletes. In regards to how you said, we're not getting the number one kid in the nation at St. Francis, which, by the way, 99.9% of the universities aren't getting the number one or even top 10, by the way. But I'd like to explore that with you. But let's go back. So real quick, let's make sure we connect the dots. You go from Manchester to St. Francis.
St. Francis, yeah. I spent 3 years at Manchester University. at my third year, kind of full circle what we talked about earlier, I got married. And it became more than just me at that point in time. So I was kind of ready to move on and then find a position that worked for my family at that point in time. Um, had the opportunity to apply for the job at St. Francis. Mike McCaffrey, our athletic director, entrusted a 26-year-old. I was only 26.
Wow.
To take the reins. But it just kind of an interesting story of how I got the St. Francis job. We had a baseball player who loved to lift, and my office was in the weight room. And I unlocked the door for him to lift, and he goes, "Hey, I was in Fort Wayne the other day and heard that the St. Francis track and field position was open." But because I was willing to make relationships with other sports teams and other athletes and not just be so track focused, he felt comfortable to tell me. He felt comfortable to talk to me. I opened the weight room for him and supervised him while he lifted. You think about chance. I hadn't seen it on any job posting. I hadn't seen it on any big national board. But then applied for it, interviewed for it, got the job. We actually, our first meet was in like middle of September, and I think I got hired 2 days prior to our first cross country meet. So that was a very quick turnaround, but been at St. Francis ever since.
I love that because, there's a lot of words. It's a great example of a lot of different words, right? Fate, luck, serendipity. To your point, I love your point about, what? I didn't just stick to just track people, staying in my bubble. Because I got out of my bubble, this opportunity was presented to me. Being nice to people. I don't want to overlook that part of the story too. It's like, you weren't doing something to get something, but you did get something, and now an amazing position there. So I love that story, especially as we, good or bad, the one message board link or topic or whatever that I will read religiously is the open coaching positions on letsrun.com. Yeah. I think there's a lot of people right now that want to judge me that also go to that thread or whatever, so you can judge all you want. It's the one. I don't really look at any of the others, but that one I just find fascinating, again, partly because of my passion of coaches. So I like to see where people are going. I also love to see the people that are just wildly, the trolls. It's like, well, you're just an idiot. But I also respect that there are people who know a lot of stuff that are in quote unquote big time positions, important positions, that do report on there. There is just as many post number 21 that says Kyle Allison's going to the University of Arkansas, and then 100 posts later is the announcement of Kyle Allison going to the University. It's like, oh, you guys keep forgetting that people are on here. So but on that message, on that thread, there's a lot of like, oh, every position when it's open, especially head coaching positions, it's already known before it's posted. And oh, you've got to know someone. So like if someone from the outside were to look at Kyle, how you got to St. Francis, it would have been like, oh, Kyle knew one of the hiring ADs before the job was even hired, or went to school with the SWA at St. Francis. Like that's how he got the job. I mean, come on, he's only been a coach for 3 seasons. What? Come on, he obviously knew someone. It's like, actually, scratch all that. Didn't even know the job was open. Didn't know anybody there. Had to interview and earn the job, just like it quote unquote is supposed to be, right? Like most of the real world out there, that's out there. So I love that kind of, like I said, call it what you want: fate, serendipity, dumb luck. I love that you had to, first of all, that it came from a kindness act, and then you interviewed and had to earn the job just like you're supposed to. So I love that. So before I get to the topic I wanted to get to, I always do love to ask first time head coaches. So were you ready? Were you prepared? And you're 3 years in. So if you say yes, I'm just going to cut the interview short right here, right now, Kyle. Okay. So you're good. You already said no. So what I'm always interested now. So how long have you been at St. Francis?
I just finished my 6th year, so going into 7.
Beautiful. So you're kind of still a rookie, but you're much more experienced rookie. But when you look back now, because one of the amazing things that we have today that we didn't have yesterday is experience. We don't have, perspective of what, when we're going through it, but now you do for 6, almost 7 seasons. What, as the head coach, when you got the job, what surprised you? Because there's a lot of people right now that think they want to be in your chair. They want to be a head coach. They, for whatever reason, whether they think it's power, pay, title, whatever they think it is. What surprised you the most of like, oh crap, I'm the head coach. I'm responsible for.
Oh man, I don't know if it's a simple. I'm responsible for the university's success in athletics. And St. Francis was in a rough spot at that point in time with the program. We only had 16 total in the entire program, men, women, cross track. We had one total cross country runner on the men's side. One. You got to have 5.
Yeah,
preferably you have 10.
right.
And that's still small. And so, coming into it, we actually were in violation of not fielding a team. You do that a couple years in a row, they're going to tell you no longer can sponsor that sport. And so kind of having that pressure of like, we've had cross country for the last 40 years. We want to continue to have cross country. We need you to get out there. We need you to recruit. We need you to field the team. My first year, I begged 2 tennis players and 2 baseball players to come run to try to get to 5. I think for 8K, I think they probably ran north of an hour. Meet directors hated me, but I had to field a team. Looking back at it now, I realized why I was 26 years old and had the opportunity to become a head coach is because they were in a great spot. But when you become a head coach at a school, you are an extension of that school. Sometimes one of the most publicly viewed extensions. Cross country and track and field may not be the most public sport out there, but you're going to travel across the United States. You're going to wear the uniform. You're going to have the university name attached to it. You have to make sure that you are a representation of that. So I think that's something that I was like, holy smokes, I'm the guy. I am the person that makes the decisions. I'm the person that says, get on the bus. And that's something that has always kind of stuck with me.
What about the opposite side? So when you become a head coach, you're doing things that you maybe have never done. You're budgeting, you're setting a track schedule, you're setting the schedule, what time we get on the bus, you're recruiting. There's so many paperwork and stuff that you have to do for your conference and for nationals, things like that, eligibility, compliance, etc. It's amazing how many hats you have to wear as the head coach, and specifically the head coach of track, because you have 6 sports with men and women's cross, men and women's indoor, men and women's outdoor. So the opposite side of that question, then, what was something that was new to you that, man, you just picked up like that? Like, you're like, man, I thought that was going to be hard, but wow, I feel like I have a knack for
administrative stuff.
Yeah, is that right?
It's something that a task that can take 2 to 3 hours. I feel like I've been able to really, I'm going to get it done. I'm going to grind it out because I'm here to coach and recruit. It's not fun sitting through the compliance stuff. It's not fun, preparing your budget for the next year. But if you have it kind of figured out and you have it ready to go, then you can get to what you're here for. You have to do all of that stuff to be able to go to meets. You have to do all that stuff to be able to go recruiting. And so I feel like I do that really well. I feel like that's something that, not a passion of mine. No one says that that's a passion, but being able to be organized and streamline that process has been able to allow us to do a lot of things, because I'm not spending a ton of my time on getting our buses around, getting, hotels, doing things like that, just being able to get it done.
That's a good look into what head coach actually means. It's not necessarily being in the circle and helping kids out or being on the runway for the jab. It's being in the office sometimes, filling out paperwork, etc. So a lot of people aspire, again, to be in that seat, that head coaching seat. What advice would you give them to help with that part? Because I think we'll put aside that they know how to coach, so the actual X's and O's on the field and on the track, but when they sit in that chair, what's some advice their first year in that you can give them to help prepare them?
I would go and try to find a coach who's been at your university for 10, 15 years.
Oh, interesting. Why is that?
I don't care what sport they coach. Go find them and be like, what's the hardest part of your non-coaching job? What do you feel like you have to spend the most time on? And learn from them. How do they do it? How they've been able to survive the last 10, 15 years. You know, at a small school, we don't have super robust staffs to lean on. It's up to you. So, I walked up to our softball coach. Our softball coach has been at St. Francis for, I think, 13 years at that point in time. And I was like, okay, I've never prepared a budget before. And we just went from 16 kids on the roster to 40 in a year. What do I need to ask for? What are they going to tell me no for? What are they going to tell me yes for? How do I get my point across? But I would say, young coach, go rely on the other coaches in the office suite. It doesn't have to be a track coach. It can be a softball coach, a baseball coach, a golf coach who's been at the university for a while. They know how the university works. They know how the NAIA or the NCAA works, and they're going to be able to walk you through it and help you through it.
If you are a new head coach right now or have aspirations to be a head coach, I would highly recommend you hit the rewind button about 4 times. Go back 1 minute there, because what you just said there, Kyle, I think that's some of the best advice I've ever heard. Mostly because, again, I'm always concerned about our bubble. When we talk about track and field and we talk about the popularity of the sport, we're always arguing amongst our own fandom. And a lot of our fandom is coaches. That's not a good thing. If the NFL only thrived on football coaches, it would not be the billion-dollar enterprise that it is. So I'm always concerned about how do we get out of our bubble? How do we see what other people are doing successfully, whether it's other sports or other businesses, other activities? Why is esports so big right now? I'd love to learn more from them and how they do things. We had Lamar Daniels, now I think formerly of Lord's University, on the podcast. I had him on just to learn about esports. I knew nothing about it. That he also coached esports. I was like, all right, we're gonna have you on the podcast just so I can. It was a completely selfish episode. I was all for me to learn, right? So I love that advice, Kyle, about, hey, go find someone who's been at your university for longer than you're day one. Go find out, how have you done it? What are some of the pitfalls to look for? What are some of the gains that I can get? What are some easy wins I can get? How do you handle this side of paperwork? What do you do here? And then use that experience, because that's one thing you can't force, right? I can force more training into you and technique and things like that, but I can't force years of throwing the hammer. I can't force years of being the head coach and making mistakes and forgetting to schedule the bus and things like that. But someone else has done that at your university. I love that. That pairs well with the advice I heard about on the success side. So the actual athletic side of your university is going and finding the coach or coaches who've had success. So who's winning conference, who's winning nationals, and say, hey, so how are you recruiting kids, those kind of kids here? So you can learn, like, oh man, I never thought about tapping into the XYZ part of high school track and field, or JUCO, or internet, whatever, that's, because each university is different. So what amazing advice right there, Kyle, about utilizing someone else in your athletic department to help gain that experience that you just have to do day by day. So you use someone else's mistakes and triumphs, man. That was really good. Okay. So here's something that I wanted to talk about. I thought this was really interesting. So you were a D2 athlete, and then a D3 coach, and now an NAIA coach. That's 3 fairly radical organizations to be in, right? You go from being in an organization that allows scholarships, D2. You go to an organization, D3, where there are no athletic scholarships, and now you're in NAIA, which I admittedly don't know as much, but I know they offer scholarships. So you're back to a scholarship program, but it's different. You're not under the NCAA branch. What are some of the differences and uniquenesses that you've seen as an athlete, assistant coach, and head coach in these 3 different organizations?
Yeah, I just remember as an athlete, it felt like you were signing your life away to the NCAA at a certain point in time. You're sitting in all these compliance meetings, and this was 10, 15 years ago now, and a lot of things have changed since then.
Right.
But I fully remember, the University of Indianapolis is a member of the Great Lakes Valley Conference, signing a piece of paper saying they are able to use my name and image in any publication that they see fit. And I just remember looking at that paper, just being like, okay, this is kind of different. I'm not used to this yet.
And if you disagree with it, then you don't get to
You're
compete.
done.
Yeah. There is no like, oh, okay, well then we won't do it. No. It's just like, oh, well, you don't sign this, you don't compete. Yeah. It's a little intimate. I remember giving that piece of paper, during compliance and looking at my athletes, and they're like, coach, it says, and I'm like, Yeah, I know, man. I got
Yeah.
nothing there for you. That's
So
interesting.
I assume it's a little different nowadays with all the name, image, and likeness stuff that's come out. But I think Division II was a really good opportunity for me to see what top end collegiate athletics look like without the we have to make as much money as we possibly can off these teams. And then you go to a Division III school where if you love the sport, go spend time at a Division III school. There are a lot of universities out there that give student athletes an opportunity to get amazing educations and continue to do the sport that they love. I was very fortunate that when I was at Manchester, we were very successful. Won a bunch of conference championships, had All-Americans, was able to see what NCAA Division III is at the highest level. But yeah, you're asking kids to come on their dime. You're not giving them any scholarship money. Really focused on the academic side of things, having to submit your schedule to the university to make sure that they don't miss so many hours of class because they want to make sure that they're there.
Your training schedule or your meet schedule?
Both.
Wow,
Manchester,
right?
we were fortunate in the fact that Manchester allowed us to have protected practice time.
Okay.
So from 3 to 6 p.m., the university didn't have classes.
Okay.
So that was really nice. We could always do that, but it's not like me coming from the Midwest. I could ask to take a bunch of people out to Mount Sac, in California, because they were going to miss too much class, and they didn't want to miss class. And spent 3 years in the Division III model where it's student athlete, student athlete, student athlete. And you go to the NAIA, which has kind of been branded as the Wild Wild West.
Hold on. That means you have not coached JUCO, my friend.
Yeah, that's true. I've not coached JUCO.
As a former JUCO coach, as soon as you said that, I was like, oh no, that's our moniker, sir.
Yeah,
you can't take that. You can be the Wild Wild East, maybe.
Yeah,
but you can't be the Wild Wild West.
But it's. I think the NAIA allows the athlete to be an athlete and allows the coach to be a coach and allows us to take care of our athletes if they need to be taken care of. Yeah, there aren't as many rules and regulations and things like that, but it still is, you still have to be eligible. You still have to have compliance. You still have to meet all these standards to be able to compete. But it just allows us to care about the student, care about the kid.
Knowing that you don't necessarily know all the NCAA rules, who does, specifically like Division I, what are some of the NAIA rule differences? What I think I know, so you correct me, is when you start NCAA, when you start post-collegiate, your clock starts going. So you have 5 years to do 4 years. If you decide, unless, there's military differences, I think might be the right word. But generally, as soon as you start full-time post-collegiate, you have 5 years to do 4 years. If you quit for 2 years, too bad, you don't get them back. You have 1 or 2 seasons left after that. I think the NAIA has, you have 5 years to do 4 years of eligibility, and that's if you skip a year, like if you decide to quit school after a freshman year and go become an accountant for 5 years and come back, you still have your eligibility. I believe you tell me what are
we always talk about your clock starts and only is counted if you're full-time at the university.
Right. Okay.
So you technically have 10 semesters to complete your 4 years of eligibility, and it's 10 full-time semesters. So if you're a second semester athlete, if you're only doing track and field, you can drop below full-time status that first semester and your clock stops. And so that does lead to some, I think last year at the NAIA National Championship, the 2 people that won like the athlete of the year were in their late 20s. So you do see that a little bit more. But again, especially with what's happened in the last 3 years with COVID, it has allowed the athletes to maintain their eligibility and not be super worried about their clock running out without being able to fulfill their eligibility.
What about, I always like to ask this about the NAIA guys, and JUCO has this as well. Why in the world do you have a marathon championship?
Marathon in the NAIA is no more.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, we ended it last year.
My voice was heard.
Yeah, 2022. They dropped it down to a half marathon.
Okay.
it got to the point where there was a newer, younger generation. I think we're comfortable with getting rid of it.
Yeah.
That used to be the calling card of the NAIA in junior colleges. We have a marathon. Come run a
Right.
marathon for us.
Right.
And I don't think people realize the danger of a marathon at 20 years old,
Amen.
especially our championships in Gulf Shores, Alabama. It's 95 degrees, it's 90 degrees, and it just got to the point that just to say we have it isn't worth it to find a kid passed out on a park bench.
And
And
I'm
so,
I'm no distance coach. Now you did level 1, so maybe you know this. I have a hard time thinking that the same persons that are training, probably I assume for a 10K on the track, because that's the longest track event, that training is compatible with marathon training. And so because a 10K guy and gal is typically also running a 5K and maybe some 1500s, etc., I feel like the marathon training would get neglected, and now you're putting that kid on a marathon, and I don't care if it's in Gulf Shore, which is, I mean, temperature wise, of course,
yeah.
or you're doing it in the Dakotas, it's still 26.2. I just don't know that you're training properly for it. That was always my issue. It's like, what do we do? I'm not sure you're doing what's right for the athletes. Maybe if you held the marathon, I don't know, this is a terrible idea too, but maybe you have it in December. I don't know. I just, but the same time frame as your outdoor championships, and it counted towards your outdoor title points, by the way. So you kind of had to think about it, at least if you wanted to win a title. That just didn't seem smart. I just didn't like it. So I guess I'm so happy my voice was heard. What was it? What was it that actually stopped it? Was it people talking about the safety issue of the?
Safety issues, and then I don't think people quite understand the cost of running a marathon. Having to close roads down, having to be able to do a lot of that, and when the NAI is looking for people to maybe put in bids to move the national championship around a little bit. That's a really big negative side of it, and that's more the business of collegiate athletics. But and then there's just been a lot of new things coming out about health and safety of athletes, making sure that someone running 26.2 miles shouldn't be running 30 miles a week and then going, hey, go run. Especially in the NAI, you can qualify you used to be able to qualify for the marathon just by running a half. And it's like, I wouldn't want to be able to qualify someone in the 10K off of just their 5K time. And so it just really changes everything. And then a half marathon, a lot of people run 13 miles on a Sunday. That's a pretty normal thing. And so there was talk about moving it to a half, but then it just got to the point. It's like, well, if we're going to do that, just get rid of it.
So you don't have the half. It's now just 10K on the track is the.
Yep, 10K on the track is the longest event that we do.
Yeah, I was gonna say even the half, and you can cheat a lot of things in the half. And what I mean by that is under training, not cheating.
Yeah.
Under training and still be okay. But boy, a marathon at under training just seems like a terrible, terrible idea. So I'm sure there were many programs and coaches that didn't like that, that hung their hat on the marathon and in that distance.
Our business meetings at the coaches convention have been pretty lively the last couple of years, talking about the marathon and should it stay and should it go. And I think it's just for the betterment of the student athlete to not put them into a situation that they're not prepared for, to get rid of it. So
earlier, did you say you're 6'7" or 6'4"?
I'm 6'4".
Yeah,
6'4".
Well, it'd been better if you're 6'7". Did you ever stand up in those meetings, all 6'4" of you, and like, look, guys?
Unfortunately, I'm still the young guy. Still the young guy. Don't have much of a voice. We started to see a little bit of success here. So I think my voice will start to get a little bit bigger.
You stand up and they're like, hey, look, man, when we want shot put and hammer stuff, we'll talk to you. This is the joggers. That was offensive. I shouldn't have said joggers. This is the distance guys and gals that are talking. That's right.
Yeah.
Don't let them try to take away the hammer or anything. All right.
No, we're not letting that happen.
Okay. Good. So what about the NAIA as a head coach? And I know you don't have experience against being a D3 or D2 head coach, but like what makes you enjoy NAIA? And I'm assuming you enjoy NAIA because you're still there and you have been successful. So there potentially have been other opportunities for you to move elsewhere. And of course, you talked about the different age and stage of your life at this point. You got family to consider now when you think about other opportunities. So what is it about the NAIA that you enjoy that's still keeping you there?
I think the NAIA does a great job, especially in cross country and track and field, in trying to allow student athletes to compete at the highest level for the championships. You know, on the track side of things with our standards, the A and B standard to qualify for the national championship, it allows a really good opportunity for an athlete to see that as a goal to qualify for nationals. So I think the NAI does really well with that.
So walk us through that for those of us who don't know
Yeah.
how you qualify for nationals. Tell me how you do it.
Yeah. So indoor track and field, outdoor track and field, the NAI has two standards. They have an A standard and a B standard. The A standard, if you hit that mark, you're in the championship. You're in no matter what. The B standard is a little different. The B standard, schools get three per gender. So you get 3 male, 3 female rights of entry on that B standard. So you run into a situation sometimes where maybe you have 7 people on a B standard. You have to pick which 3 get to go to nationals.
Oh.
But again, it still gives you that student opportunity to go to a national championship. And so that's how we've always kind of determined. We have a committee of coaches that set those standards every single year on what it is to qualify for the national championship.
On the A and B standards and the 3 per gender per institution, does that count if an athlete has the A mark in the 100, but the B mark in the 200? Would you have to use one of your 3 for that B 200, even though he or she's already in the 100?
Yeah, you would have to use that B mark. It's per event.
Yeah. Okay.
And
yeah.
so
Right.
like and then like the other difference with it is you only get 1 relay on a B. So say you qualify a 4x1 and a 4x4 both on B standard, you only get 2 individuals in 1 relay. You can't take multiple relays on the B standard.
Okay. And you
So
have
a little different. But you know, my first year national qualifier, we only had 1 B standard, and you know, I think he got like 23rd in the nation that year in the 60 hurdles. But he hit the mark. We knew he was going to nationals. He earned that right to go. We were able to use our B standard entry for him, and be able to take him to nationals. Now we're a lot more A standards, and you know, but it's nice. I like, you know, talking to some of my friends that coach NCAA Division II. They got rid of, you know, the auto provo system kind of, and it sounds like there's just a lot of going into that last weekend of the qualifying window going, okay, well, I think they might qualify, but they may not. Where the NAI has a very clear cut, if you hit this mark, if you jump this high, if you throw this far, you're going to the national championship.
You mentioned 2 relays. Doesn't NAI have different relays besides the 4x1 and 4x4?
Yeah, so outdoors we do 4x8, 4x4, 4x1,
Yeah.
and then indoors we do 4x8, 4x4, and then DMR.
4x8 and the DMR indoors.
Yeah, 4x8 and the DMR. Indoors is very indoor.
That's tough.
Yeah, if you have a very competitive mid distance group at the NAI level indoors, you can be very successful.
When are they going to add like the shot put 4x1 or something? We need to add some. Yeah. I do love the relays.
I wouldn't do that. I don't need any of my guys ripping hamstring trying to run.
What and then you also have, I believe, the race walk is in NAIA as well, right?
Yeah. So they do 3K race walk indoors, 5K race walk outdoors. I've had 1 total race walker on campus for a visit in my 6 years as a head coach at Saint Francis. Not something that we really dabble in, but it has, again, similar to the marathon, has helped some teams win national championships. Just because it is not a super popular sport or event in our sport, but those who do it score a lot of points off of it.
Yeah, and great. That's another event that likely you would be teaching from scratch. Yes. like the hammer. You're all 5 years old race walkers, because it's not I don't know. I'm gonna say I don't know any states that do it for high school. I'm thinking New York and maybe like a Maine or something like that.
It seems pretty East Coast heavy. If you look at those that are competing at the national championship, they may be at schools, because NAI doesn't have a huge prevalence kind of in that New England area. So you see a lot of kids come out and compete in the Midwest from, you know, your Massachusetts, New England's, Maine's, Rhode Island's. So they have to at least be doing road races, something along those lines with a race walk out there.
Right. So that's interesting what you think about NAIA. So as we wrap up today, Kyle, what about St. Francis has you excited? You know, you're going into year 7. You no longer have just 1 B standard to choose from. Now you probably actually have that tough decision of which 3 am I going to take out of my X number of B standards. plus on top of the A standards, which is amazing. So a lot of progress. I'm assuming you have more than one person on your cross country team now.
Yeah.
You're pushing for conference titles. You're pushing into the NAIA national rankings, things like that. What's got you excited here as we go and look at year 7, 8, 9, 10 for you here at St. Francis?
We have some of the young up and comers on our team right now. We had a young man this last outdoor season, Spencer Carpenter. He was 4th in the nation in the 1500.
Wow.
As a freshman, true freshman.
Wow.
He's got some real lofty goals, so we're really excited about him. And then just continuing to see what we can do at St. Francis. One thing that not a lot of people talk about, we don't have any facilities. We don't have an indoor track. We don't have an outdoor track. All of our success is by grinding and just being who we are.
So what do you do? Typically you might say, and maybe you're going to say this part, you find a local high school. You're in Fort Wayne, so there's some amazing high school facilities there, to be real frank with you. But I immediately started thinking about that hammer. You can't just do that anywhere. So how do you do it with no facilities?
We luckily have a very hilly grass area with about a 20-foot tall chain link fence that we use for a hammer. But as we have gotten better, that facility is starting to kind of get small, real small, because the backside of it, which is at about 66 meters, is people's yards and fences. And, we had a young man who threw right around 60 meters this year. If he would pull it to the left just a little bit, we were getting kind of close to hitting some of those fences.
I can just see sitting out on your porch, drinking your coffee, like, hey, that's not a golf ball.
Yeah. And I think that's also kind of part of it. Like, we're in Fort Wayne. Fort Wayne's a decently large city. We're in downtown Fort Wayne, essentially. So there's not a ton of space. But I talk to my team a lot about controlling what you can control. We can't really control the fact that we don't have those facilities right now. There's nothing I can't go out there with a backhoe and start digging. It's not going to get done. It's not going to be done properly. I don't know anything about that. But we can control, the attitude that we bring every day into practice. We can control, we have a little bit of a facility. Let's try to maximize it to the best that we possibly can. So we tend to be a pretty throws heavy team. We do have an indoor track here in town that we rent and use at 6 a.m. in the morning. So kind of early risers. But, we're just excited about the team that we have. We're excited about the kids that we have on the team. Very competitive women's distance program here. We've been in the top 25 in the NAIA the last 2 years in cross country. Really looking forward to kind of those next steps with that team to see what we can do. A team in our conference, Taylor University, has won the women's cross country title 8 years in a row now. I would really love the opportunity to see if we can get our women to go get them.
Shots fired, Taylor.
No, they know that we're trying. Everyone's trying. When you've done it for 8 years in a row, everyone's trying to knock you off the
pedestal. I was gonna say, I don't know many championship winning coaches that don't know that someone's gunning for them. That's why you go to win, is so that someone can gun for you, So I adjust there. Well, I love that, Kyle. I love the well-roundedness of your team as well, from cross country to the 1500 meter sophomore now that got 4th, hurdlers, obviously I shouldn't say obviously, on top of that with throwers, and the no excuses attitude there. I mean, it's one thing, as I deal specifically with facilities throughout the country, facility projects, it's one thing to have a successful team. That's hard. Remember, winning is hard. That is hard. To win conference, to be in the battle to win conference, to be top 20, top 10 at nationals, that's hard. To do it without facilities, I don't know what's harder than hard. I mean, it's one thing if you're just going to be distance, I guess, which still doesn't make it easy. But you can do some roads and cross country courses and things like that. That's not the easiest. But to have throwers and jumpers without facilities, man, and to have no excuses with it, that's just so, to me, admirable. And I love that. I want you to have amazing facilities, both personally and professionally. I want that, of course. But I love the no excuses of like, all right, well, we're okay. That's what the cards were dealt. So this is what we're going to play, and we're going to play it to the best of our ability.
I think that's what's made me the coach that I am today. I've had to get creative. I've had to try to make sure that the kids still get the work done that they need to get done to be successful. We talked about the coaches convention. I've listened to a bunch of coaches talk who have a lot of nice, shiny, pretty things to be able to go coach at. And then I listened to a coach talk a couple years ago, and he was like, not all of us have those shiny, pretty things. There's some of us out here that are holding together hurdles with duct tape. They're fixing hammers on their own to try to make sure that they can get more life extended out of them. We're getting to the point that we have a healthy enough budget. I don't have to do quite that. But there's a lot of coaches out there that do it with a lot less than what the normal is. And that's, in my mind, and I'm going to be on my soapbox, that's where the superstar coaches live.
Yeah.
They're in it because they want the kids to have a really good experience. They want them to love track and field. They want them to love running, and they're willing to do what it takes to make it happen. I'm a throws guy from Warsaw, Indiana, and I am trying to do the best that I can to make University of Saint Francis a very competitive NAIA cross country and track and field program. If that means I got to wake up at 4:45 every single day to go in there, that's the choice that I have made to do what I need to do for my kids. I'm very fortunate in the fact that my wife was also a track and field athlete. So she kind of gets the grind a little bit too. Love where I'm at, love the university, love the 75 student athletes that I get to represent every single day.
Was Miss Allison thrower or another event?
She was significantly better than I was.
I was going to ask who was the
So I always joke with her about it. Ironically enough, my wife threw hammer at a rival school of ours now, Indiana Wesleyan. They're in our conference. So I was at the University of Indianapolis. She was at Indiana Wesleyan. We both were throwers. And so she it's nice. She gets it. She understands what it's like to be a part of a team. She understands what it's like to be team mom, team wife, team, whatever it needs to be. She is in it for the team. And I think that's huge, to be able to come home, and if you've had a bad day, for her to be like, yeah, that happens sometimes, and just have that support system there. And, she's a national qualifying NAIA hammer thrower, significantly better than I was. She's gone on to do some really great things in athletics after her retirement. She's an athletic trainer, has been able to do some really fun things with that. So it's just nice to have her as an unpaid kind of emotional support person.
You mentioned you have a little one. Don't try to start teaching turns just yet. Just have him you said little boy, I think, right?
Yeah.
Just have him watch videos for now so that it's imprinted as a youngin', but don't try to start to teach the turns just yet. Okay.
My women's hammer throwers love it because he'll come out and he'll drag the women's hammers around, and they seem to always PR after he touches the hammer. So, having him around the team, I have a feeling he's probably gonna, pick up a hammer, pick up a javelin, try that out at some point in time.
Or he'll try to go to medical sales and find his way back into an amazing carear.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely, man. Kyle, thank you so much. I just really enjoyed your journey. And what I love about it is how young it is. And what I mean by that is you've had a lot of success, a lot of experiences at this point in your career. But man, I like to use this analogy of, because I'm in track, right, of this race. So usually it's a quarter-mile race. I'm always in my head visualizing, but you're barely, and I know sometimes it doesn't feel this way. Sometimes it feels like you think you're at 350 and you're just slogging, just trying to get to that finish line. But my man, you are barely at the starting line. And that should be exciting for you. I'm excited for you that you're barely on the starting line, because that means there's so much more of that race to go. You have so much more experiences to learn, so many more experiences to have, and much, much more positive impact on young people to come. What you do at Saint Francis, what you did at Manchester, what you might do at another university one day is immeasurable. I don't speak on this enough, and I'm making it kind of my it's my New Year's resolution for July. I don't wait till January 1, baby. I'm doing it right now. That I want to impart on coaches. You mentioned earlier about when you teach hammer throwers when they're 5 years old, because they're learning, there's a lot of highs and a lot of lows, right? Because you're learning everything. It's tough, and then you pick up something, then it's tougher, and etc. So I know in your profession, which also bleeds into personal, especially as a wife who did it, right? And you just, even if she didn't, even if she was never even saw a track, she still has to, I'm gonna say, deal with you. She has to deal with those experiences with you, right? So I know there are times when you come home and there has to be just, man, why am I, this is just hard. It's harder than it needs to be and should be. Or man, why aren't we getting the respect that track deserves? And other days, you think you're the king of the mountain, best coach ever, best life ever. No one has it better than you, right? But I just want to impart on you that on those down days, even on the worst days, your impact on young people is immeasurable. And the reason I use immeasurable is, you said you had 75 people. When you first got there, I think you said you had 16,
16.
maybe six, one cross-country person. That really got to me. Even if you kept 16, let's use an easy number and say 20. I'm from Alabama, so math is not my strong suit. Okay, so let's use an easy number here. Even if you kept 20 kids a year, I'm gonna say only 20 kids compared to 75 a year, they go off to be business owners, doctors, mothers, fathers, grandparents one day, homeowners, etc. They base a lot of their decisions off of the impact that you and your staff has on them. When they were down at practice and you picked them up, when you taught them a new skill and they PR'd, when you taught them a new event and they become a champion, that they thought that never entered their head, but you believe in them. What a coach does is they see things in others before they can see it themselves, right? So when they think about that experience, they then go on and impart that to their network, whether it's a coworker, a family member, a stranger they let open the door to the gym, right? They learn that from you and your coaching staff. And so even on your worst days, you are helping the world. This is no hyperbole. I am one for hyperbole. Trust me. This is one where this is not hyperbole. This is God's honest truth. Your impact on society because of what you do on the track and off the track with your athletes is, again, I'll say it, immeasurable. It's not measurable. It is incalculable to know the positive impact that you, your coaching staff, the other coaches that we've had on the podcast, the other coaches that will be on the podcast, and the people that I'll never have on the podcast for one reason or another. If you were a coach, guys and gals, trust me, even on your worst days, you are doing something that is so impactful in this world. It is thankful. It's grateful. I'm so glad we hire former athletes here, whether it's in sales, back in our back. We have welders and packers and cutters, and they all played basketball and track and things like that. And they'll tell you, it's like, yeah, you know why I'm always on time? Because man, my coach, she imparted on me why that was important. And they're not still doing that sport. They're contributing to something much greater now at that point because of guys and gals like you, my man. So I just want to say thank you. You don't hear that enough. I hope you hear it a lot, but I don't think you hear it enough as a coach. If you're listening and you're a coach, thank you. Again, I know you hear it. I hope you hear it, but I don't think you hear it enough. But what you do, man, is incalculable. And I'm just so thankful and so thankful that you would share that story with us today. And I can't wait. Like I said, it's so early. You're not even at the starting line, my man. I can't wait to look 10 years from now and talk to you, and 20 years from now and just hear the accolades, the highs, the lows as you go through your journey and just continue the positive impact you have. So thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your story.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Had a blast.
Awesome, man. Thank you for being here again. I'm just so humbled that you'd listen to us here on the podcast and join us next week. We're going to do it all over again. We're going to bring another amazing person who happens to be a track coach, which is, again, a lot of choices. This guy could be selling medical supplies, which I guess is probably good. I guess we need that, but it ain't coaching the hammer, my friend. And I'm so thankful he does. Have a great day.